Welcome to freeCorelDrawTraining.com. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about a really cool tool, and this is the Mesh Fill tool. Now, in terms of accessing the Mesh Fill tool, notice on the left-hand side of my workspace, the toolbar, it's the very last option at the bottom. So I'll go ahead and click the nib to get access to all of the features in that category, and we're going to focus in on this Mesh Fill tool. Of course, M on your keyboard is the tool that will activate the Mesh Fill. Now, why would you use the Mesh Fill? The Mesh Fill is a tool that will blend multiple colors together in an object. So if you ever want to take an ordinary object like this lotus flower that we have on our workspace and make it almost realistic and give it some dimension and give it some texture, the Mesh Fill is an excellent way to achieve that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate it. So go ahead and select the option. I'm going to click on an object. We'll focus in on this centermost object, the teardrop shaped object. So notice when I click on it, we kind of get this grid, and we get a 2x2 grid. Now you can increase your grid, so if you wanted to blend in more colors and have more control, you can go ahead and increase the grid controls here. Now the process and the workflow is very, very simple. Once you create a grid on an object, we can go ahead and drag and drop colors onto that grid. So what I'm going to do now is I'm left mouse clicking on a color, and anytime you do that, you're going to get sort of relative colors to that core color. So these are, think of this as a color family, and we have this graduating from dark to light. So we can grab different complementary tones. I'm just going to go ahead and select a tone, and I'm going to drag and drop that on the inside of a grid. Notice when I release, it applies color to that specific region of the grid. Well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to select some complementary colors and go ahead and drag and drop that into the grid system. Now, when you're doing this, pay particular attention to kind of creating a play on light. So think of how would light affect this particular design. Should this look like it's top lit or lit from the bottom or left or right hand side? So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're laying this out. How would light really impact this? And the better you do that, the more realistic it's going to tend to look. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this particular design here. Now we can see the effect on screen. The one thing I like to do is to kind of give this a little more sort of realistic look, is I like to blend the colors together. So there's a really great way to do that. Where my mouse is now hovering on the property bar, it says Smooth Mesh Color. And of course the indicator here says reduce the appearance of hard edges in a mesh fill. So this is really important, especially if you're using radical colors. You can really help to synthesize and blend those together a little more naturally by selecting the Smooth Mesh Color. So that just helps to once again blend these together a little bit more naturally, and that will leave you with a better result. So you can see as I deselect the Mesh tool, you can see the effect that we have on screen now. We had a flat one color object, and now we have an object that really has a sense of dimension, and we have that color blend together. It looks beveled, almost three-dimensional. Well, in terms of taking that effect and applying it to the balance of our design, there's a really great way to do that. So we'll go back to our Mesh Fill tool here. What I'm going to do is click on another object that I want to create the same effect. I'm going to go to this object now where my mouse is hovering. It says Copy Mesh Fill. So now that I've selected another object, I'm going to go ahead and activate the copy function, and my pick tool has been replaced by this big black arrow. So what you need to do is click on the object that you want to copy, and you can see how that replaces it or copies it to that object that we just selected. So we'll continue that process. We'll just copy, select, and just continue that process until you're satisfied. Now what you may want to do is you may want to select an object and copy the properties of something unique, and that may transform the way the light appears, or we can continue to drag colors into the mesh. So these are all still interactive, so if you really kind of want to give this a little sense of uniqueness and you don't want to have it to be so uniform, do you see I can go and continue to drag and drop color into the design to just make it look a little bit more realistic, give a sense of color or a light play here. So go click on another object, we'll copy the properties and just continue this workflow until your entire object has been created here. We'll go grab properties from this guy and copy that over. And you can see this really doesn't take long to do. So you'll spend most of your time concentrating on creating maybe the first object, getting something that's agreeable, and then we'll go copy all those properties back over. So you can see how really it takes no time to really give a lot of dimension to an ordinary graphic by using the mesh properties. This is a really great way to accent and highlight complex vector-based designs, to give it shadow, to give it dimension. So this really has a lot of application, especially with flesh tones and just objects that need a little more decoration to them. Now the other thing that I really like about this is the ability to always come back and edit this. So once again, if I'm not satisfied with the colors, maybe I want to give a specific object a little more sort of definition, I can continue to drag and drop colors onto this to give those changes. The other thing I like is that I can treat this like a vector object, meaning I have the full flexibility to say take this and maybe duplicate it, and I can change the size without losing any dimension or quality. So it still retains all of its vector-based properties, but I can scale it and treat it as though it were a vector, although it has what appears to be a bitmap-based or a raster-based effect to it. So I invite you to experiment with this. There's really no wrong or right way to use it, but it definitely will give a lot of dimension to your designs.